4 years ago, we stood on the verge of our redemption. 4 years ago, we stood at the very point where the reconciliation and restoration of all of Israel, Judah and Ephraim, was about to occur. But something happened. We didn't quite get there. At the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, I was back in America, and I was delivering a presentation that I thought was among the most inspired, humbly speaking, that I had ever heard, let alone delivered. Because what I did, it was interestingly, talk about timing, it was entitled, "For Such a Time as This." It was that verse from Megillat Esther, the Scroll of Esther, when Mordechai says to Esther that you've been put here in this place at this time for such a time as this. I proved that in the previous 3 years, more had occurred for the restoration of all of Israel than in the previous 3,000. The stuff going on the Jewish side of the family, in Israel, by the way, not here or anywhere else, only in Israel. But on the Ephraimite side of the family, now understand something. I've been involved in this since April of 1994. Many of you have heard the story. How I got dragged into this? We could talk about it maybe on Monday, although we've got other things to talk about. Wow. But what had happened in those previous few years? First of all, in August of 2013, I began coming back to America to speak to groups like this. This now, by the way, is my 20th trip since August 2013. No, I'm not so sure it requires applause. Probably more sympathy than anything else. But what else happened? In August of 2013, I was invited to speak by Batya and Angus Wooten, the real pioneers of this walk, to speak at their conference, ARI, Alliance of Redeemed Israel, the organization that was formerly Messianic Israel Alliance. The first and only time that a traditionally believing Jew has been invited to attend and speak at a conference like that. The only time. Shortly afterwards, along with my buddy Ken Rank, we started this concept, United to Restore, with the number 2, United to Restore, Judah and Ephraim, all based on mutual respect. Within rapid succession, a number of things happened. Mike Clayton and I, who I had never met him, we began this thing called the Connect to Israel Tour. 3 years in a row at the Parade of All Nations, the March of All Nations in Jerusalem on Sukkot. You know, that's a parade where you have 5,000 hair-on-fire Christian Zionists. For the first time ever, 3 years in a row, 130 plus Ephraimites walking behind the banner of United to Restore. With the quote from Joseph, "It's my brothers whom I am seeking." Not a single negative comment from the crowd of Israelis. Nothing. Cheers. That inspired my dear friends Ephraim and Ramona Frank to have a Congress of Bnei Yosef in Ariel, in Shomron. 3 conferences they had. That inspired the creation here in America of Bnei Yosef North America, working on the restoration of the northern kingdom, Ephraim. Things were happening in rapid succession, one after the other. The Christian Zionists, Pastor Hagee and friends, were at the pinnacle of their influence. And then something happened. We lost the eye of the tiger. We lost our sense of urgency. We lost our mojo. And it's interesting that this is Parshat Bashalach. Why? Because we came to the sea. We came right in. We dipped our toes in. And instead of going forward with our call for reconciliation and restoration, we stepped back. It's a nice piece of beach here. I can collect seashells there. Look, there are lounge chairs set up. Mud from the Dead Sea. Sunscreen available. No reason to go forward. What began happening, which I'll chronicle momentarily, was actually part of the sorting out process that we forget. We forget that the word remnant comes up repeatedly. Yes, there are tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of lost Ephraim and lost Judah in the world. They're not coming back. They're being sorted out. What was so successful back then? Congregations were opening up their doors left and right. Because all of these congregations were Israel-centric. They were all focused on Israel. They were all focused on the restoration. For the Christian Zionists, it was very simple. I will bless those that bless you. I will curse those that curse you. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-a. So what happened? There are a number of different areas that people point to that caused issues. And by the way, people don't usually fess up to me. So this is like second and third hand information that was brought to me. Because when I come to people and I say, why aren't you involved anymore? They get kind of embarrassed, oh, shucks, So, but this is, and it's in a number of different areas. So we'll go through each of them systematically. One, people point to, they blame the state of Israel. Two, they blame American Jews. Three, they blame Christian organizations, churches. Four, they blame other Ephraimite groups. And there's a whole new category that I didn't intend to speak about when I came here to the U.S. on January 2nd. What a long, strange trip it's been. Let's just call it America. Because there's now an American factor involved in it too. What has happened is that people have fallen into three categories in walking away from this. The smallest one, the least significant one, is the one that gets everybody's attention. Those are the handful of people who leave this walk and convert to Judaism. It's a handful of people. Since 1994, secondhand knowledge, not personal friends, but like friends of friends or acquaintances of friends, I can name 8 people that I know of that have converted to Judaism. 8. I know my Israeli accent is difficult to understand. 8. Just 8. An infinitely larger group are people that just walk away from this and go back to a standard church. We often use the expression that the revelation of Judah and Ephraim, which is the most prevalent theme in the entire Tanakh, in all the Hebrew prophets, it is the only thing where God himself says that he will do something with all of his might. And that's to restore his people in his land. So we often use the expression, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Somehow they have. I've spoken at congregations that have subsequently closed their doors And they're now all back in the church. That's the whole 9 yards when I say back in the church. I'm not denigrating Christianity, but it's, the pulled pork on Sunday afternoon. The whole 9 yards. I don't understand it. What's the largest group, though? The largest group who leave congregations like this and just go into nothingness. People who were committed to Israel. People who fought the BDS, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, the attempt to crush us in Israel. People who were active on social media for Israel. People who are running around buying Israeli products all the time. Heck, I even know people who sold Israeli products who now have absolutely nothing to do with Israel. Nothing. What the heck is going on here? Well, the simple reason is it's so much easier not to. If you can hide your consciousness, I've said this here before. After over 10 and a half years in Israel, I've reached a point where my level of improvement in Hebrew is now only gradual. That first jump is that first year. And even though I work in English as a tour guide, I'm rapidly forgetting English, which means that soon I will be semi-literate in both languages simultaneously. So when I lose a word, please forgive me. It's so much easier. But let's go back and let me share with and I know for you, for whom Beit Tehila has been the only congregation that you've been involved with, I know what I'm saying makes absolutely no sense to you. And you're not delusional. You're just in a bubble here. You're in a bubble thinking that every congregation is trying to figure out, well, should we go on the congregational tour to Israel or should we go to Hayovel and volunteer? Gee, I don't know. Can we do both? That is not typical. People blame the state of Israel. People say to me, they've actually said this to me. Bless their hearts. Well, if I can't go live in Israel now, I'm just not, I'm not going to do anything for Israel. Maybe an occasional prayer, but I'm just not going to be bothered. Really? Oh, why are you upset? Because 3 years ago you decided that you're part of Israel, and now the government of Israel should welcome you with open arms? 4 years before that, you were hair on fire as a charismatic Pentecostal. And now, well, yeah, I'm a part of Israel. And you don't like that no one believes you? By the way, just to reiterate, I know many of you have heard me speak before. I always come out and say I do not advocate people converting to Judaism. I say that flat out. I don't believe that Joseph needs to become Judah. You all love that part. And I also don't believe that Judah needs to become Joseph. The problem that we have, particularly here in America, is y'all aren't used to letting God be God. Americans are busy recreating God in their own image all the time, which is the opposite of what's supposed to happen. So, it's like, well, the state of Israel does, really? And I can tell you, some of you know that I wrote a chapter in a book that was edited by Rivka Lambert Adler called 10 from the Nations. And we actually met through that. There are people that spoke at the book launch. I was one of the speakers. I was one of the 4. By the way, I didn't make the original cut, but someone bailed out at the last minute and they said, who else can speak without, notice? The tour guide. Let's just give him a microphone. But one of the speakers from the Ephraimite side, that was in October, 2 years ago, by May, on her website, was spewing the most vile Jew hatred. So in other words, like I tell people, don't become Jewish. We already have enough confused Jews. Please. Stay loyal to what resonates in your hearts, because that's your relationship with Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven. So they blame the state of Israel. Okay? A better one is those who blame American Jews. They say, well, if American Jews don't support Israel and go, why should I? I'm going to take my ball and go home. First of all, a poll that I read this past week said that 80% of American Jews support Israel. First of all, I don't personally believe that that's true. I think it's much lower. But forget that. Why are you blaming American Jews, who actually should be called Jewish Americans? They're so, every other ethnic group in America that's hyphenated is African Americans, Italian Americans, Irish Americans. So why is it American Jews? Because they're so flippin' paranoid that y'all won't think that they're American enough, they've got to put it right out there. We're American Jews. Do you realize that most of the Jews in this country are Americans who by accident of birth alone are Jewish? They are 3 or 4 generations removed from any Torah study, any Torah lifestyle. Go out, find some Jewish person here. This is Florida. You'll find them. Find them. Run over and tell them what the prophet Zechariah said, that at the end of the days, 10 from the nations, and they'll ask you, Zachary, who asked you to tell me what? They won't know what you're talking about. People say, why? American Jews are so liberal. Big city? Yeah. They're not homesteaders. That was in the 19th century. They blame Christians. Well, I'm going to wait till the other Christians get their Hebrew roots. We were discussing about this, Pastor Nick and I. I don't believe you get your Hebrew roots. It's not a virus, okay? Everybody here in these seats today and listening online got that divine email, got that divine invitation. But by the way, you're not the only ones. But you're the ones that RSVP'd. You're the ones that said, in the words of Josh Waller, there's a line in the sand. Where will you stand? The widespread support for Israel amongst major church bodies is a thing of the past. It's like referring to Europe as Christian Europe. That's the Middle Ages, long time ago. Forgotten. What's big now? Something called Christian Palestinianism. Quote, Jesus was the first Palestinian. Really? Do you realize being born in Judea and Samaria, what the EU likes to call the West Bank? By the way, it's actually, for those of you who've been there, it's the Eastern Hills. But the world calls it the West Bank. We'll talk about that another time. It's not worth our time. Do you realize that Yeshua would have been boycotted today by being a product of the West Bank? Kind of interesting. Quote, Jesus, born of the military occupation. It's actually true. Just a Roman, a Roman. Let's not confuse the issue with facts. So the idea that Christians naturally support Israel, forget about it. They're too filled with replacement theology and just plain old Jew hatred. I tend not to use the term anti-Semitism because it's too mild. And we Israelis, as you know, are not at all politically correct. Okay, many of you have been to Israel, and many of you have learned Hebrew. Are you familiar? I may have taught this when you guys, with the last tour was over. Do you know how to say politically correct in Hebrew? I'll teach you. Politically correct. We don't even have a term for it. It's so foreign to us. I love it. I got a thing from PayPal asking me to take a survey. And they gave me 7 genders to choose from. I love this idea that I can go to a bathroom anywhere and self-identify which stall to use. I am so inspired by that I have decided that from now on, I'm going to self-identify as a superhero. Why not? I mean, you got to make jokes about this because your head will explode. What else do people blame? Well, let's see. Other Ephraimite groups. And what is it that people are getting distracted? Why are people losing their focus? Like squirrel? You know, where? Well, there's the new essential teaching of the week. What could that be? Different calendar, perhaps. The earth is flat. Flying from Baltimore to Tampa the other night, in that little bit of rain, 2.5 hours of turbulence. Do you know what's amazing, by the way? When you're on a flight and there's severe turbulence, everyone on the flight becomes religious. It is remarkable. You go through every one of the Tehillim of the Psalms. It's amazing what you actually remember. Then I reached down saying, did I bring my rosary? No, I didn't. I forgot. See, Holy Mary, Mother of God. Now you want to cover all bases. It's that scary. The world is insane. So I wanted to tell those pilots from Southwest that the earth is actually flat. They don't need to loop around. There's no things like air currents or any of that stuff. The temple was not on the Temple Mount. Really. And I actually have corresponded with these mental midgets to try, and I'm quoting the archaeological sources, and then I find out they've never even been to Israel. But they quote the verse from Matthew that says, not a single stone of the temple will remain standing. So they say, and look at your western wall there. I say, you go look at it. That's the outer retaining wall, the box that held up. Ooh, they didn't know that. Y'all a bunch of fools. I mean, seriously. My favorite. The Jews are not the real Jews. Okay. Now, I could counter with DNA evidence. Let's do a mic drop on this one. Only kidding. Pastor Russell's like, don't drop the mic. He worries too much. He's too high strung. If the Jews are not the real Jews, that Hashem, that God himself, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, has screwed up. He's the one that blew it. He brought the wrong people back to Israel, has showered us with brachot. Boom! He messed up. I don't think so. America. What happened 3 years ago? A new president. A new president who promised that he would make Babylon great again. America. I know I'm agitating some of you. Don't misunderstand. If I had been in America and was voting, I would have voted for Donald Trump. It's not like you all had a choice. And if you didn't think that was a choice, just wait till November. Okay. All of a sudden, the urge to work together to build the kingdom was replaced with, we're going to be able to buy some new goodies this year. See, people forget, you know that I live in Modi'in, but I actually live on Facebook. So I see when people write to me and say, I want to come to Israel, but I can't afford it. I have no money. Or they'll say, I'm coming to Israel, and I want you to guide my family and I for 9 days, and I can only pay you $35 a day. That's what I do. That's my response. You know what? But on Facebook, I see what you buy. I see it. The new mobile homes or whatever it is. We have money for what we want. People cut back on their tithes. You know, by the way, that's another pet peeve of mine. I got to quote my dear friend, brother, and mentor, Mike Clayton. When Mike speaks to groups in this walk, he shares with them that when y'all were in the mainstream churches, you were taught that the entire law was done away with, except for tithing. But in most congregations in this Hebrew roots, Messianic believing, whatever you want to call it this week, you know for a fact that the entire law is in effect, except for tithing. Exactly. Now, that's another thing about this congregation that impresses me, because you know what? People walk into their congregations and somehow magically they expect the lights to be on, the heating to be on, excuse me, this is Florida, the air conditioning to be on. They expect it to be clean. This doesn't happen without work and effort. We cannot have a restoration of all of Israel unless people focus on their families and congregations first. Back to America. First of all, I got to tell you, I got a chance to watch a little bit of the State of the Union address. People have laughed at our political system in Israel for the longest time. You know, understand something. We Israelis love our democracy so much. That's why we've decided to have a third national election in 12 months. It only costs a few billion shekels. It's not like we need the money for anything else. There's only 150,000 missiles from Lebanon alone pointing at us, the Iranians. I'm not even going to say bless their hearts. No. 150,000 missiles, by the way. I'll digress for a second. Many of them with precision guidance systems. What does that mean? Recently, when Iran fired missiles at that American base in Iraq, did you notice they hit each building pinpoint head on, but didn't kill a single American serviceman or woman? How's that possible? Because they knew exactly what they were hitting. That's what we're up against. There isn't a week that goes by in Israel that either a former general, and we've got a lot of them, or former head of the Mossad or military intelligence doesn't warn us what the next war will be like in Israel. On the home front, busy stocking, protein bars in the safe room in my little apartment there. Yeah, we want to prove once and for all the definition of insanity. Repeating the same event in our elections and expecting a different result. I've read the polls again for March. Same pile, just a different day. I rarely quote President Trump, but he said something recently. He said, "You keep having elections and no one wins. Strange system." He's right. So I'm watching the State of the Union address, and you have the witches in white over there. You've got the Speaker of the House, Cruella de Vil. I mean, it's bizarre. And you've got President Trump, who's gloating over things that he shouldn't necessarily be gloating about. It's bizarre. The theater of the absurd. But the urge for the kingdom has dissipated, because this is an America now for the last few years with relatively low unemployment. You're still stuck with the same lousy healthcare system, but no one's like really upset about it anymore, or at least for now. I don't understand. The building of God's kingdom is what is in front of us. But instead, we'd rather tithe to Target or Walmart or something else. What's going on? The people who've left all of this to do what? Go back to being a Baptist? What, to practice the waterboarding? Isn't that illegal in your country, by the way? Yeah, in Cuba? No? Okay, maybe I'm mistaken. So what's going on? Now, understand something. Growing up in the 70s, I was very influenced by the music of my generation. I think I would have understood the lyrics a lot better had I gotten high or drunk. I didn't, and now it's a little too late to start. One of the groups that I liked the most was not all that popular. In fact, most of you probably never even heard of them. A group called 10 Years After. Alvin Lee was their head guitarist. They had a great song at Woodstock called I'm Going Home. It's on the Woodstock album, the original Woodstock, not the one in the 90s. Other song, but they had a song that made the charts. It's called I'd Love to Change the World. And the lyrics from the chorus are really simple. I'd love to change the world, but I don't know what to do. So I leave it up to you. That's what's happened. All of a sudden, we don't know what to do. All of a sudden, there's no more Shabbat. All of a sudden, there's no more Israel focus. It's the American curse of hedonism. Do you realize that even Americans who struggle economically would be rich people in most of the world? In India, where you have people living on cardboard boxes. It's unbelievable. I will bless those that bless you. I will curse those that curse you. It's time to get our mojo back. And the answers, conceptually, are very simple. It's the action that stops people. This is a difficult talk for me to give here at Beit Tehila, because I feel like in many cases I'm preaching to the choir. I don't know of another congregation in this country, by the way, this is a worldwide phenomenon. You don't hear much from the third world because they don't have the money to be able to get to Israel as regularly as y'all are able to do. I taught in Sri Lanka, the Ephraimite community. I don't know of another congregation that sells Israeli products. I know several that buy the monthly subscription box from Lev HaOlam, from Nati Rome, supporting Israel with every dollar that they have. I don't know another congregation where the big debate is, should we go to Israel with the tour or should we go to Israel on Hayovel? I mean, really, you know, I got a little mini update this morning from Pastor Tikva, telling me, you know, we've got about 20 people. Fantastic. Yeah, there were several that were going to go, but, you know, they're in Hayovel. What a great default position. I've said here before many times that 2/3 of Hebraic roots Messianic believing congregations in America will not allow me in the front door because I'm a Jew. and I am not what y'all call, quote unquote, a believer. First of all, I could have a field day picking that term apart, but that's a topic for another day, maybe over food. Just kidding. Of course, I scheduled my appearance here a week before the Oneg. Stupid is as stupid does. I'm sorry. My bad. Actually, next Shabbat, I'll be in New York City. Nueva York, the Big Apple. Yes, talk about roots or however you want to pronounce it. Yeah, then I get to go home. I get paroled. This has been a very long trip. I've been to, I won't do it in order because I can't, Kentucky, the state of Washington, a couple of times in the Republic of Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, 2 separate trips to Louisiana. Don't ask me why. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and then I'm going up to Virginia. By the way, speaking of Georgia, I really, really appreciate that song that was dedicated to me today. Not only because of its lyrics, but because it was sung by my friends from the Exodus Road Band, who I spent last Shabbat with. And Brittany Covert and Ryan Cribbs, who were doing the vocals. It really, it's like this group, my home away from home. So how do we get focused on Israel? Well, you know what? Whether you're going on our tour for Shavuot, and by the way, there still is time. There's still time to join us. I will pressure the folks from Lipkin Tours when I get back home to squeeze y'all in. But now's the time. Now's the time. I don't want to hear people saying, okay, well, there was the Sukkot tour, there's the Shavuot tour, and when are we going next? Don't put off for tomorrow what you can do now. And that's the other problem that's affecting the movement. Mañana. There's always a tomorrow. We'll get to it. Yeah, we don't have a Jewish speaker coming. We don't want one. By the way, do you know what the longest list is? Places that have hosted me, loved me, or what they say in the South, loved on me. I got great reception, and then afterwards, the board then meets and says, well, you know, he's a Jew. And then they come up with all kinds of excuses and never, ever have me back. That's okay. Thank you. One of my favorite series was The Punisher. Payback. So you have to understand something. Vengeance is of the Lord, correct? But I'm hoping he'll let us play with it from time to time. I don't ask a lot, just a little bit. Every single person needs to have an Israel fund. I've said this before. It could be a coffee can, it could be a jar. You could be like friends of mine in Texas who have a 5-gallon water thing. How they pick it up afterwards and empty it, I have no clue. 30 minutes, get out of here. Really, they were drawing the short straw before. Who gets to give me the time cards? It's like, no, please don't make me go out there. That's okay. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Israel is not cheap. But what in life that's truly worth it is. I mentioned about, this concept of, planning for the future. I have real trouble with meeting people my age or older who've told me it's been their dream to go to Israel for the last 35 years. I hate to say it, but ask Kobe Bryant what his plans are. I mean, and the news just keeps coming out. Rush Limbaugh. advanced cancer. Brad Scott, renowned teacher in this walk, brain cancer. You never know. Don't wait. Why do you need to go to Israel? More than you need to see Israel, Israel needs to see you. I can wax eloquently about all these people around the world who are struggling to keep Shabbat, who are struggling to eat biblically clean. We need to see you. People need to see you. I often used to say that going to Israel will change your life. Stole another expression from Mike Clayton. Going to Israel will define your life. It will center you on what is the most valuable elements in your life, in your heart, in your core, in the values that cause you to get up from day to day to day. Could you imagine when we were back in college, if someone would have come over to you and said, you know what, I'm going to make you a deal. For the next 35 or 40 years, I'm going to give you a job. And we're going to give you 2 to 3 weeks a year off, 10 other paid holidays, And that's all you're going to do. You're going to get up every morning. Your purpose of life is merely going to be come in, punch a clock, and do what we tell you. Do we have a deal? Slavery. If you have no higher mission in your life, and your mission could be your family, your congregation, but it all fits into something. Don't tell me as a parent you can merely love your children and not give them a vision of what life should be, or could be, or might be. That's your job as a parent. Man, so many times that I just want to go and be my kids' friends. They didn't need another friend. They needed an Abba. They needed a father. They needed someone that would sit and say, you know what? Yeah, you're 16, 17 years old, whatever it is. Yes, you're right. You can make your own choices. But understand, you're now responsible for the consequences. I can't keep you wrapped in bubble wrap forever. Prayer for Israel cannot be stressed enough. We are facing a war or series of wars that will be nothing less than catastrophic. The damage and the casualties that will be inflicted on the home front will be at a level that we've never seen before. But understand something. I'm not asking you to pray or act on our behalf. We'll be fine. No matter what the damage, we will come through it. We will rebuild the infrastructure. We will build all the buildings that'll be knocked down. And God willing, we'll also replace the people who, God forbid, are taken from us. But I worry for you. Our side of the family is already home. By the way, and it's pretty much those aboard that are coming aboard. Population of Israel now, 6,800,000. By far the largest Jewish community in the entire world. People say, well, what about American Jews? What about them? About 3,500 American Jews go on Aliyah every year. They don't always stay. It's a much harder life. 3,500 out of a population of about 4.8 to 5 million, insignificant. And whenever you hear things like, well, when the socialists were going to win in the UK, British Jewry is going to leave. They're always threatening we're going to leave. Sometimes they do go. About 35, 40 years ago, when the French separatists won in Quebec, the Jewish community in Montreal was panicked. And many of them left. They went to Toronto. This is the first, we're now second generation, where modern Orthodox American Jews speak Hebrew. They send their children to Israel to study for a year or two post-high school. They choose that. Do you know what it's like for me to meet another Orthodox Jew from America who asks me why I went on Aliyah? Why I live in Israel? It astounds me. But it's the sorting out. Understand something. This is not a bad news presentation. This is good news. We're being sorted out. That's all it means. But the burner is being turned up. Now, here in America right now, things are pretty good. Although not for everybody. Do you realize that Jews are being violently attacked in America and in New York City? That's the other thing people say. Well, what do you expect me to do about Jews in New York? If they won't arm themselves, I'm not going to do anything about it. Arm themselves? The Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox community from Brooklyn, arm themselves? Excuse me. Did you ever see the movie Straight Outta Compton? Yo, Dre, I got something to say. No, I'm not going to go on with that. These guys are straight out of Poland. They're from another world. They speak Yiddish. They don't carry smartphones because you could, God forbid, access the internet and may see things that you shouldn't see. These are the guys you expect walking around with a Glock? Ain't going to happen. And your love of your brothers and sisters should not be conditional. Do you know what it's like for me to go to congregations and people are, everyone's, friendly. And in the end, they come over and they say, well, here's a couple of Messianic tracts you may not have seen. Bless your heart. It's the idea people think of a very simplistic world. When I was in high school, I worked in a pharmacy, the local drugstore, and the pharmacist had a sign in the back that said, "It's hard to be humble when you're as great as I am." Most congregations in this walk suffer from that problem. They're so busy patting themselves on the back because they've got all the truth now. Now, a few years ago, as a Baptist, they had the truth. Before that, as Methodists, everyone has the truth. They don't have the maturity to study Scripture. I was complaining last night at the Shabbat table that I don't hear the audible voice of Hashem in answer to my prayers. And I figured out why. Because everywhere I go, people are telling me that the night before, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, came to them and told them the following. Told them what tribe they're from, told them what Hebrew name they actually have, told them the earth is flat, told them I'm really not a Jew. Whatever it is. God is so busy talking to them, he's got no time to talk to me. Here in America, who is attacking Jews? Well, it's an equal opportunity thing. You've got white supremacists, you've got black Hebrew Israelites, you've got everyone in between. You got a crazy woman that was on the subway looking for Jewish women to go over and slap him in the head. And she got arrested. And she was released without bail. She went back the next day, did it again, got arrested, released without bail. Third time. I went to New York January 2nd. I rode the subways for 4 hours, jet-lagged and all. I had the biggest kippah on my head. It was like a sombrero. Okay? It's like, go ahead, make my day. I unfortunately did not see her. We're standing at the sea. Once again, we're standing at the sea. And we're whining, just the way our ancestors did. The person that looked back and saw the Egyptians coming said, Moshe, do something. So what does a good leader do? He prays. The response in Hebrew is devastating. Ma tzitzak elai. Why are you crying to me? We know what to do. We just don't always do it. When I saw the most dedicated people that I knew, the most dedicated to Israel, the activists, the ones fighting for Israel, buying the products, selling the products. How do you go from doing that to having nothing whatsoever to do with Israel? I was horrified. But now, actually, I'm gratified because we're all being called out. We're being called out, and we've got to make that decision. Where do you stand? Now, this congregation, I feel almost embarrassed saying that because, and by the way, don't be confused by the banners. I've been to many congregations that have banners of all the tribes, but still don't want the Jew back. It is the one hand clapping. It doesn't quite work. And I tell you something, sadly, after 26 years of chasing y'all around town, I'm getting tired. After all these years, I am the, how do I say this? I am the only person, still, the only traditionally believing Jew that's willing to embrace and accept you as you are without condition. I'm not the only Jew in Israel that knows that you're Ephraim. I am, however, sadly, the only one that's willing to let you be you. Everyone else wants to take you, have you give up your beliefs, dunk you in a mikveh, and make you a Jew. They do. Now, I know you find that abhorrent. I do too. Just as abhorrent as it is for me to go into a congregation and have, do you know I had a pastor say to me, listen, Hanoch, when you accept Yeshua, and I know you will, I want you to do it in my congregation. I don't want to read about it on Facebook. No, I thought he was joking. So I laughed. I was like, yep, right. He's like, no, I'm serious. I want you to promise me. Now, he obviously doesn't know Pastor Nick. So he could say whatever he wants. Nah, yeah, again, you can either laugh or cry. But this is the time for all who identify as part of Israel to stand up. And again, my main concern isn't for us in Israel. Jews aren't so easy to mess with anymore in Israel. You'll notice the difference in Israel and here in America. And by the way, I appreciate the fact that you have a Second Amendment. We don't even have a constitution. I appreciate that Americans can buy weapons and train how to use them. I've seen the video of that church where the guy came in and shot someone and was immediately shot down. However, I do also read the accounts on the Walmart parking lot in El Paso, Texas. And I'm willing to bet that more people per capita have guns in the Republic of Texas than any state in the United States. So how is it that people can still be killed? Very simply, because you don't go into Walmart going down aisle 3 like you're clearing a room. You're not prepared for that. By the way, understand that there's a major terror threat coming to America. All of those illegal immigrants that people were talking about over the years were not just illegal immigrants coming up through the borders. This is something, and you have to understand something. This is a danger still ahead. Americans have a very short-term memory. After 9/11 in New York City, they immediately built concrete barriers at all the entrances to Wall Street to prevent car bombings. By 2008, 7 years later, they pulled them all up. That's it, no. That's it. I love America. Despite my jokes about Cruella, really, in the Knesset, it's mild compared to that. We only occasionally have people like slap each other and stuff like that. What a performance. And, twitching and the faces and really, and again, the witches in white, over there, and who won't stand and applaud for anything. The general of the Tuskegee Airmen. How can you not applaud that? One of the great moments in American history. Fighting against the racism of the time. Wow. You just, as we say in Hebrew, no es bueno. I mean, really. This country, growing up at the end of the Vietnam War, we thought America was polarized. Nothing like now. Nothing like now. It's bizarre. I saw on social media in Israel, I was watching when the first vote for impeachment came. Yeah, we impeached the president. Yeah, show him. It's like, do y'all not understand the Constitution? It doesn't mean a thing if the Senate doesn't vote for it. You need another 35 Mitt Romneys. I was working out the other morning and they had CNN on. I don't watch this in Israel. This is like amazing. And, and they're forecasting New Hampshire and like 12 1/8% for this one. And you got Mayor Pete and you got Elizabeth Warren and you got Bernie Sanders, take from everyone and give to I don't know who. I mean, really, it's like, I never thought I would live long enough to see communism thought of as a great alternative. The Russians and the Chinese figured that one out a long time ago. It's the time that we look in the mirror and say, it's time to fess up. Don't pat yourself on the back for claiming to be part of Israel. Act like you're part of Israel. It's interesting. You remember that American Express commercial, where like this item is worth $10,000, this item? Well, I had one of those moments. I was speaking in Mesa, Arizona. And so speaking at Congregation Living Messiah was very worthwhile. It was great. It also happened to be the same time that B'nai Yosef North America was having a regional meeting. So that was like even more worthwhile. But when I called out the congregations for not allowing me back in after welcoming me, and one of the pastors was sitting in the front row in front of me, priceless. It's time to call it what it is. If you can't get over, see, I find, what is it that people are complaining about the government of Israel and this with this? They just don't like Jews ultimately. You got to look at yourself and be honest. You've got to open your heart because we're standing at the sea. We've got the command to move forward. We're hesitating. Beit Tehila is a congregation that does not hesitate. Beit Tehila has a vision to have a presence in Israel. And by the way, I love that term, presence, because it can mean a whole range of things. There's no reason to limit it. Ultimately, we're limited by our own lack of creativity. Who would have thought that people from this congregation would go repeatedly to volunteer? I mean, on our tour, you've got me to entertain you day in and day out. It's amazing. Carolyn was stomping all those grapes on Har Bracha. Monday night, we'll spend time talking about the deal of the century. Let me bottom line it for you. The land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. Period, end. There's no subletting. There's nothing else. You do not offer the land of God himself to anyone. It is a bizarre plan. By the way, it would double the parts of Judea and Samaria that belong, God forbid, to the Arabs. All of the places that we know and love, Itamar, Elon Moreh, Har Bracha, would be surrounded by this alleged Palestinian state. And I look at maps, and it's like, it's the like original map of where the independent kingdom of Palestine was, between Narnia and Middle Earth. Nowhere else. Nowhere else. And people say, well, Jared Kushner did it. He's Jewish. So? Duh. And then people are like, well, you know what? President Trump, wow. He plays 4D chess. He knows that, no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He's as close to clueless about the Middle East as you could possibly get. Oh, and people say, well, Netanyahu was there. Okay, I know you all love Netanyahu. The guy's a megalomaniac. He has been indicted. He will go to trial. He will be convicted. And he's obsessed with remaining in power. He's obsessed with himself. I've never voted for him, and I never will. We've got our own collection of options, bless their hearts. But we'll talk more about that. But this is your time to stand up and be counted. This is your time to say, we are going to make a difference. And you know what? This idea, this concept, this vision of a presence in Israel will not occur if all of you are not involved. Yeah, I figured that was coming. That's just the time cards. It's okay. I still love Pastor Russell. I don't care what you say about him. A quick Pastor Russell story. I was here more than a year ago. It was Hanukkah time. You guys remember? Okay. And Pastor Nick and Pastor Danielle, normally I stay with them, but they had decided to do these like surprise renovations on their roof. Micah wanted to have a skylight, open to this, well, whatever. So for Shabbat, I was with Pastor Russell and Dina. It's also the first night of Hanukkah. So there's Pastor Russell, and he's jumping up and down, and he's like, it's almost Shabbat, and it's almost Hanukkah, and Judah's in the house. I'm looking at him like, yeah. My celebrating Hanukkah is not a big deal. I've done it since I was born. Judah and Ephraim celebrating Hanukkah together. That was special. But the enthusiasm that he showed is so typical of this congregation. That's what distinguishes you. Other places, I'm trying to review CPR in my head. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Do you do the breaths anymore? I don't know what to do, because they're essentially dead. They're spiritually dead. They have no inspiration. They go nowhere. They turn on YouTube for the latest, people say, well, the teacher's got to be legitimate. He's got 3 videos on YouTube. Any idiot with a camera could put a video on YouTube. I've got several videos coming up soon. This is the time, brothers and sisters. We are family. This is our time. We are the most blessed generation in history. As I say all the time, I'm not. Maybe y'all are, but it's his time. I do have the sense, by the way, that the restoration is quickening. It's happening. And I believe the net is being cast out for other peeps, for all of those who have begun to fall away or will fall away. And now is the time to stand up. I'm looking forward to seeing many of you on our tour. I'm also threatening Pastor Nick that I'll be back in America somewhere in the June, July timeframe. But wait, by the way, thank you. So humbling. And by the way, I'm an okay public speaker, but I'm an amazing tour guide. Now, I don't have to be humble at all. Why? I didn't do it. Hashem, God did it. I was the guy in college that would sit across the room and stare at a girl and have a crush on her for an entire semester and never have the courage to ask for her phone number. All of a sudden, I come to Israel, boom. I can go anywhere and speak anytime, at any length, about any subject. I could talk about interplanetary navigation. I could be the halftime show of your Super Bowl. Just like J-Lo, Jenny from the block. I come from the Bronx too. I won't climb a pole. I heard she climbed the pole. Yeah, Shakira. Yeah, these hips don't lie. This is for all of the discomfort that people in this walk felt when they saw that show that I heard about. The majority of Americans loved it. Understand you are set apart. Now is the time to seize your destiny and be everything that you can be. That's what the children of Israel are called for. Guys, thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom.